everyone, it's Jack from Cultaholic.com with another news video. Check out Ross's news video from earlier on in today for all of the other headlines. We've got a second batch of lovely headlines to talk about now, so I think without any further ado, we'll just get straight into those headlines. First of all, we have an update on Jeff Hardy's condition following a very scary bump on last night's Raw. Also, we'll take a look at the result of the incredibly close ratings battle this past week between AEW and NXT. And finally, a Retribution member was unmasked on Raw last night, but under slightly unusual circumstances. So yes, first of all, we have to start with the quite serious news of talking about Jeff Hardy's condition after what was a very scary bump on last night's Raw during that Symphony of Destruction match with Elias. I think that's what it's called. The one with all of the instruments around the ring where you can use them as weapons. It's a themed hardcore match, essentially. And the match seemed to be going well up until the final spot, which was where Jeff laid Elias on a table at ringside, headed up to not just the top turnbuckle, but the ring post, stood on the ring post, and then leaped off with a swanton bomb through the table, and he hit Elias as well, and managed to pin him from the move, but it was the back of Jeff Hardy's head which appeared to hit the bottom of the ring steps. Several news sources online have commented on this incident, including Fightful, who claimed that all indications are that Jeff Hardy was okay after his nasty swanton spot. Hardy jumped from the ring post to ringside onto Elias, who was on a table. Hardy barely cleared the steps by the post. We've also asked about Elias, considering the rough landing. Meanwhile, over on Wrestling Observer Radio, Dave Meltzer said that there is an expectation that Jeff Hardy has a concussion, but hasn't been diagnosed yet. Brian Alvarez, his co-host, said that he heard that Jeff Hardy was okay. Meltzer went on to clarify, he said, "I'd heard there was kind of an expectation that Jeff Hardy had a concussion, but he hadn't been diagnosed as having one because that wouldn't come just yet anyway." So according to Meltzer, just the fact that Hardy hasn't been diagnosed with a concussion doesn't necessarily mean that he didn't sustain one. I mean, it was a very nasty fall, and I don't think anyone would be surprised if he was concussed as a result. So obviously, I'm sure everybody will agree, we all want to send our well wishes to Jeff Hardy after what was a very scary landing on Monday Night Raw. He seemed to be fine, like he finished the match and everything. He was obviously in pain, and I don't think it was just selling, like he was grabbing the back of his head, but you know, he did manage to make the pinfall. He didn't fall over or anything. It was a scary moment, but I think hopefully he seems okay. But then obviously there's a long-term conversation to be had here, or a longer-term conversation, because these things definitely add up, don't they? And I mean, Jeff's been doing this kind of stuff for, I mean, longer than many of us can remember, for, you know, 2 decades or so now. And it's got to take its toll on the human body at some point, right? There were also echoes of the incident involving Jeff's brother Matt Hardy at AEW All Out, of course, when he fell from that scissor lift sort of contraption and again hit the back of his head on the floor below. So a bad year for the Hardys in terms of rough landings, but hopefully Jeff is okay. Next up, Keith Lee, as you may have seen, was unsuccessful on last night's Raw in that triple threat number 1 contenders match, which was instead won by AJ Styles. But I think the key thing here is that Lee looked really good in the match. He was throwing people around. There were a lot of spells of dominance for Lee, and he didn't take the pinfall. I think it was Ripley who took the pinfall off Styles in the end. So Keith still looks strong, but he was talking to Sports Illustrated recently about recent changes regarding his move to the main roster. Obviously now he has a new set of theme music, which has been received a lot more positively than his previous one when he first came up to Raw. But also the big cosmetic difference, of course, which caused a lot of controversy, is that Keith is now wearing like a vest top, a shirt, which a lot of people thought took away from his imposing figure, and I think I'm inclined to agree with that. So Lee touched on both of these topics in this interview with Sports Illustrated, saying, first of all, I'm very happy with my music. There is one little tweak I intend to make over time, but that's got to be a timing thing, and it's got to be well done for me to make it work the way I want it to. Not sure what he means there. Could he mean like if he turns heel or something, perhaps? Anyway, he says, I have some evolutionary ideas for my current music that just hit, but in terms of the song itself, I wrote that myself, and a lot of it is very personal. I'm very happy with being able to express myself in that manner. Even the track, the guys that did it are brilliant. I'm extremely happy with the way the track sounds. I'm happy with the music overall, and I look forward to the little tweaks that I intend to make down the road. What could that mean? But next up, he goes on to talk about his ring gear, saying, as far as gear goes, my gear is the same as NXT, except I have to wear a top right now. Is that my choice? No, but I do what I need to do in order to also keep the people I work for happy. At some point, I will get so big that it won't matter what other people want because Keith Lee knows what's best. I'm sure that's true. If Keith Lee becomes the biggest star in the industry, no one's going to care if he disagrees with wanting to wear a shirt, they'll just let him do it, surely. He finishes by saying, someone will figure that out at some point, and then I won't be wearing a top anymore. Until then, I have no problem with it. Very interesting stuff there from Keith Lee. Also interesting stuff in another recent interview, or I guess more accurately, a podcast appearance from Rhea Ripley, who was on Lillian Garcia's Chasing Glory podcast, and talked about how she felt like she lost her confidence following WrestleMania 36, this year's WrestleMania. Now remember, of course, at WrestleMania, Rhea opened night 2 of the show, losing to Charlotte Flair, losing the NXT Women's Championship to Charlotte Flair, a result that took many of us, myself included, by surprise. A lot of people thought this match would be used to give Rhea a big result, push her over the top, make her seem really legit and credible, big win over a big main roster superstar. But instead, Charlotte just won. So Rhea said about this, I'm not really too sure what happened. I did feel like that. I definitely have gone through a stage where I did start losing the confidence in myself because I just wasn't portrayed the same way that I was. Like even now, I'm still slowly building myself back up from it, and my confidence definitely was tainted a little bit, which sucks because I try and keep it up and do my best all the time. That's very interesting, especially with her linking it to the way she was maybe presented afterwards. It must be quite jarring going from being this like dominant force on a very competitive women's division as well. Remember how strong the NXT women's division always seems to be, and then losing to Charlotte, and then suddenly, you know, what did she do after that? Was she mixing it up with the Robert Stone brand, I think? She moved quite jarringly, quite far down the card in a very short space of time. She goes on to say, I don't know if it was something inside my head that just wasn't getting the picture, but I don't know. I got a little bit lost after it, but right now, I feel like I'm getting back on track, especially after doing all the things that I've done. Building myself back up has been really, really hard, I'm not gonna lie. It's been very difficult, and I've been very lost at times, but I've definitely found my track now, and I'm getting back on it. And it certainly seems like Ripley is getting back on track. There were rumors, in fact, very recently that she was gonna be heading to Raw or SmackDown before NXT kind of turned the tables on us a little bit. First of all, she lost that NXT Women's title match to Io Shirai. There was a big hug afterwards, and everyone thought, yeah, this is the moment. That'll be her last NXT match. She'll pop up on Raw or SmackDown in the next few weeks. Instead, the following show, I think it was, she came out on NXT and said, yeah, I'm not leaving. What were you thinking? I'm here for good. And everyone was like, oh, well, that changes our feelings a little bit, because Rhea's kind of an invaluable member of the NXT roster at the moment. I think she's a fantastic performer. She's very young still. And even though she's already had this long dominating championship reign, which is now obviously over, I think there's still a lot for her to do. Now let's talk ratings. This big ratings war, the Wednesday night wars between NXT and AEW rolls on, of course, with AEW tending to win the ratings battle week on week. But was that the case this past week, which was a particularly big edition? It was the pre-Thanksgiving edition of the show, or I should say of both shows, I suppose. And the fact that you had, you know, families gathered together the night before Thanksgiving, a lot of people may have traveled home for the holidays and that sort of thing, you'd expect that this would be a chance for a bit of a ratings boost for both programs. Well, the official figures are in, and NXT pulled the most viewers with 712,000, but then AEW were only just behind with 710,000. Razor wire stuff. This is NXT's first win in a few weeks. They won the Halloween Havoc edition as well. Do you remember when they put on Halloween Havoc, as opposed to AEW, who didn't really go too over the top with the Halloween theme? That makes a lot of sense. Halloween Havoc was presented as a big card, lots of big pay-per-view worthy matches, kind of like what AEW were going to probably try and do this week as well, with the whole winter is coming and everything, and the big title match between Omega and Moxley. So often these ratings can be determined by which side stacks their show the most on any given week. But generally speaking, AEW has kind of had a bit of a stranglehold over these ratings, because before the Halloween episode, the last time that NXT beat AEW, apart from weeks when AEW wasn't running during the NBA playoffs when it was just unopposed, the last time NXT won just a straight fight between the two was on all the way back on the 8th of July. So it's a big win for NXT. Now, what are the reasons for this? I think part of it could be WWE's historic, I guess, involvement with, or association with Thanksgiving, maybe. They're obviously an older company, more of a traditional company than AEW are. And maybe with people traveling home for the holidays, maybe it's a bit of a nostalgia factor. Let's all watch the wrestling if that's on the night before. Even lapsed fans may have tuned in because they heard that WWE was on. I don't know if that is too much the case, but apparently Dave Meltzer also mentioned that last year, the pre-Thanksgiving episode of AEW was also a pretty bad one for that promotion. So it's a strange one. There's a lot of factors that could potentially have been in place here. Another one could be the fact that obviously they included a big main roster star in the form of Kevin Owens on the show, who turned up and did his episode or a segment of the Kevin Owens show alongside the 3 contenders for the North American title, and then obviously Regal came out and booked the triple threat match for the upcoming War Games show. So as I mentioned, lots of various different factors, but the long and short of it is NXT with 712,000 viewers this week, AEW with 710,000, but could it all change when this week's show hits the air? I think maybe we'll see AEW get back on top. And finally, we'll close this video with the shocking news that a Retribution member was unmasked on last night's edition of Raw. Kind of. May have been on purpose, it may have been an accident, it's kind of hard to tell. So this all came about when Reckoning had a match against Dana Brooke, and in the opening moments of the match, a kind of errant swipe, I suppose, by Dana knocked Reckoning's mask off her face, revealing shockingly that it was Mia Yim all along. I couldn't believe it. I was absolutely shocked at the revelation that it was Mia Yim. And then even worse for Mia, or Reckoning, apologies, she lost the match as well. So it was a bad day at the office for her. And then even worse than that, Mustafa Ali berated Mia, Reckoning, after the match for her failure to win. Now that's a bit of a double standard, because if he's going to start berating Retribution members for failing, he should have probably started quite a long time ago. They don't win that many matches. On the other hand, Slapjack won his match this week, so fair enough, he beat Ricochet with the help of, interference and distraction from other Retribution members, but still, he did better than Reckoning did. It remains to be seen whether Reckoning will be ejected from the group and she'll become Mia Yim again. Maybe I'd quite like it if she just rocked up on NXT like nothing had ever happened. I don't know, I really don't know, but we'll have to see where it goes in the future. Man, Retribution, they're doing their best, and I feel for them. One thing that I didn't understand about this segment, actually, I should mention, is that I don't know whether it was accidental or on purpose. Was the mask being knocked off a symbolic thing, showing that Mia's ties with Retribution aren't as strong anymore, and Mustafa Ali was more livid because of it? Or was it just an accident and they improvised about that? Or was it an accident, but it was going to happen anyway? He was going to shout at her whether she was wearing the mask or not after the match. I don't know. But that's it for this news video. Thank you very much for watching. I've been Jack from Cultaholic.com. Leave your thoughts and opinions in that comment section down below. Stay safe out there, of course. Stay positive, and I'll see you very soon.